any offensive person from any country. But that's beyond the scope of the BDS call itself, which is a call against Israeli institutions. Still, it's not all cut and dry. There has been confusion, there are gray areas. And so last year, PACB actually released further guidelines. And I'm not going to go into them now because there isn't time, but I have them in handouts that you can take at the end, and I'm happy to answer questions about them. The point is that people often say, well, what do we do? How do we boycott? How do we do academic and cultural boycott? How do we know what to boycott? And the answer is these guidelines are there, and it's incumbent upon us to actually look at them, to familiarize ourselves with the work that's already been done by Palestinian people in Palestine. And I think it's really important to engage in these nuances of academic and cultural boycott because Israel uses arts and culture and academics to whitewash its policies. They have a Brand Israel campaign. They try to normalize themselves and fit into this sort of club of Western democratic European nations. So BDS is about saying no business as usual with Israel until it complies by some basic standards of international law and human rights by meeting the 3 demands set out by the movement. I just want to end with a Gandhi quote that I often think about with all of my political work, which is, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. So we're no longer being ignored, rarely being laughed at, we're being fought, and I think that despite the fact that it is a very long struggle, that we will win. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Kathleen, you're up next.
Thank you. Could I have a hand mic?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. That was, I'm not sure this is on.
Yeah, it is.
Can you hear me?
You have to speak right into it. Oh, it wasn't. It wasn't. Sorry.
That was a very interesting, smart, intelligent presentation, and I really appreciate Hannah's remarks. My friend Margie Fine told me not to sound like a lawyer, so I'm going to try not to sound like a lawyer, although that might mean that I have to just stop speaking right now. I want to say, first of all, that this global BDS movement, I applaud on at least one ground. I applaud it because it's nonviolent. And I think that all of us have to understand that we don't get hysterical and start yelling and screaming and acting like the world is coming to an end at this movement, because it's an extremely positive step in the right direction that this is nonviolent, and that's the way to have these conversations. I'd like to say that what Hannah said was a very fair presentation of what the global BDS movement is all about. And when I say global BDS movement, I mean that with a capital M, and it's a website. As Hannah said, this movement is about 3 things. One of the things it's about is a full right of return for all Palestinian refugees. Now, I understand where Hannah's coming from in making that argument. I personally do not support that. I personally have as one of my principal goals a democratic Jewish state of Israel. And if you support that goal, if you want a democratic Jewish state of Israel, then you could not support the BDS movement, because that is not one of its goals. Its goal is not. Its goal is to end occupation, which I agree with. Its goal is not a democratic Jewish state. So the tools that one would use will change depending upon one's goals. So the tools of this global BDS movement are to pursue its goals, and some of those goals, that one in particular, I don't share, and therefore it's not surprising that its tools are not my tools. As Hannah said, and I'd like to reiterate, BDS is not a policy. BDS are tools, and they're individual tools. Boycotts, if you look at the BDS movement, you will see hundreds and hundreds of products and companies that are on their list. The list doesn't have to do with ending occupation. It has to do with punishing Israel in a very broad way, not targeted to end the occupation. The movement is so broad, it has to do with punishing Israel for Israel's existence And I think Hannah has made it clear that Israel as a Jewish state is not a goal that she seeks. I don't think it's a goal that this movement seeks. The Palestinian Authority supports boycotting settlement products. I support boycotting settlement products. If any of you here buys a product that you know is a settlement product, how you know is another question, that's a problem. I think that we could agree that if you want to oppose the occupation, you certainly don't buy products that are made in settlements. But if you want to run a successful and effective boycott, you don't have an endless list that comes and goes and has no targets. Hannah mentioned, and I would mention too, the grape boycott, the diamond boycott, boycotts that have worked. Let me make it clear that when I said that I support boycott of settlement products, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for J Street, on whose board I sit. J Street is not taking a position in support of any specific and targeted boycott. The boycotts that work are boycotts that are smart. They're boycotts that are organized. They're boycotts that are directed to the problem. The problem is occupation. Boycotting settlement products is smart. It's related to the goal that you want to seek, and it makes sense. A boycott that is just broad-based, don't buy anything from Israel, is not smart, and it's not likely to reach the result that I personally would support, which is ending occupation. Divestments is a very complicated subject. People talk about the success of the divestment campaign in South Africa. The divestment campaign in South Africa, it was part of the broad boycotting South Africa campaign. It was difficult then to know exactly what that would mean you should do. It is impossible today. Boycotting General Electric, do you think that matters? Do you think that's going to hurt General Electric? Is that a smart tactic that's really going to lead to an end to occupation? I really don't think so. I think that if you tell people not to buy any General Electric product, you're just sort of making yourself feel good, but you're not doing the hard work to reach an end to occupation. The world is so interconnected. Financial markets are so intertwined that I challenge anybody in this room to tell me exactly what they would do to engage in an effective divestment that would actually be addressed to the Israeli occupation. Sanctions. It's certainly true that sanctions are a tool of government. Our government is not being a force to end occupation at this point, but there are sanction ideas that we could pursue that are really directed to the occupation. We could, for example, talk about our 501c3 tax laws and American tax money that is being used to support settlements, support towns and development across the Green Line, using our tax-exempt money for that. That's a violation of American tax law. That might be a smart thing to do. We could address the question of labeling of products. It's hard for us not to buy settlement products if we don't know what they are. We don't have any mechanism now to ensure that we know if a product is from Israel or from a settlement. And I think that would be a smart sanction campaign. Not that we'd manage to actually do it, but it's directed to what the problem is. Let me say a word about academic boycotts. Academic boycotts are blacklists. We can say that this is about institutions, but institutions are people. To the extent that we don't allow Israelis to travel, to teach, to publish outside of Israel, we are alienating our best friends. We're delegitimizing the left in Israel, we're demoralizing the left in Israel, and we're depriving ourselves and the rest of the world of their voices. I've talked to a number of Israeli academics and intellectuals in the last couple of weeks in order to just get perspectives on what this is all about. They all are anti-occupation. They all think this is an idea that will make things worse. And why would we engage in any tool that makes things worse? It also sucks up so much of the air It is such a diversion to say that an Israeli